Role passives. They've been a hot topic since the Overwatch 2 beta. In some cases, the passives got turned into full-on game mechanics, and in others, they were completely forgotten about until you hit F1. So while role passives are an integral part of the game, not all role passives are made equally. Let's talk about the role passive problem in Overwatch 2. So to get straight into it, what is the problem with role passives? Well, it's simple. Like I said, the role passives are not balanced equally across the entire cast. Some characters take that passive and it makes them damn near broken, while others take the passive and look at you with confusion because they've got no idea how the hell they're meant to use it. The easiest example of this would probably be the DPS passive. I mean, look at Tracer, who just became an absolute menace the second it was made. It does not matter where either of you even are. So long as she can see you and shoot you, if you take even one singular point of damage from Tracer, you have an immediate 20% reduction in the healing that you receive. Tracer can apply this passive with such ease that she's one of the best DPS and has been for the last few seasons. But say a character like Junkrat, well, obviously he could apply the passive perfectly fine, but he can't do it in any way, shape, or form as efficiently as a Tracer can. I could go on, but you all get the point. And that is the primary issue with the role passives. Even though characters will share the same role, they sure as hell do not share the same job or do the same thing within that role. The support passive is as close to universal fairness as we can get, and that's because it just got straight up turned into an actual game mechanic. Everyone regenerates health now, it's just that supports do it quicker than the others. And if anything, it gets even worse if you look at tanks. Like I said in my Reinhardt video, it is not made well. That previous steadfast passive was given to Reinhardt at 30% and it once was 50%. Now that 30% buffed up to 50% and an extra portion has been applied to the entire tank roster. Reinhardt certainly needs it, and you can make arguments for other characters who need it like Junker Queen, but why does Orisa have it? Why does Orisa have 50% knockback resistance? She's already got Fortify. Oh god. Now, there's also the fact that the role passives are like a bandage on a separate issue, but that brings us into a 5v5 versus 6v6 debate, and I'm sure as hell not starting one of those. Anyway, we already have our problem. Role passives do not apply themselves evenly on every hero, and it's not possible for that to happen. I mean, look at DPS. Where is the correlation between Widow, Tracer, Junkrat? The first DPS passive was already, put bluntly, a failure, since the only character who truly benefited from bonus reload speed on kills was Ashe. I mean, if you look at something like Hanzo, did the bonus move speed and reload speed after killing someone really help him? And this is why we ended up getting an entirely new one. But like I already mentioned, the healing reduction still suffers from the main issue that role passives have. Some characters are broken with them, and others barely notice the effect. So how can we go about fixing this? Well, the obvious answer is just get rid of them. And it does technically solve it, but that's not happening, let's be real lads. The real answer, in my opinion, is tweaking the passive based on the character. I mean, that has already happened on a technicality. Back in the beta, Lucio got his self-heal lowered because it was too much when combined with the support passive. If we look at tanks, Ryan needs that passive way more than the other tanks do, yet it's an even playing field for all. You've got characters I already mentioned, like Orisa, where having it is just excessive, and then there's some who definitely need it. I mean, Junker Queen would be thrown around like a basketball without it, you know? Overall, tanks having a resistance to knockback is perfectly fine, but keeping it even across them all is where the whole issue lies. It's not just a case of CC immunity or range either, but it's rather mobility. Doom, Monkey, Ball, even D.Va are all very mobile tanks. They all barely move when booped during their approach, and since they have actual mobility, getting knocked back doesn't affect them nearly as bad as it affects someone like Ryan. Grant, so we adjust the passives based on the character. For tanks, that's definitely the play, but for DPS, well, I have a different proposal. Like I've already said, you can take one singular point of damage and you will have that full 20% applied to you, which isn't fun for the recipient whatsoever. So my suggestion? Give the DPS passive a build-up. What I mean by this is that dealing damage builds up the passive 20% reduction, instead of starting at 20% when any instance of damage is dealt. The way I'd have the maths work out for this would be something like 10 damage being equal to 1% of healing reduction, so 200 damage has to be dealt for a full 20%. This does a few things, with the most obvious one being the gap between characters like Tracer and Junkrat gets smaller by a significant amount. It also rewards you for landing headshots since that doubles how fast you can apply the passive, and naturally it works the same way for splash damage, rewarding direct hits more than the splash. However, you'd probably want to change around the duration. I think keeping it at 2 seconds would be fine, but that may not be the way to go about it at all. Now, you can also certainly say that 200 damage for the full effect is too much, and you might be right. Stuff like this has to be tested, because even though it may sound grand on paper, and it could even be balanced in practice, it could end up feeling terrible to play as or against, so don't take these numbers as me saying I'm fully correct. I will say though, that this version of the passive would be changed to stack, so 2 DPS dealing 100 damage on the same target would grant you that full 20%. And supports? Well, I think your passive is grand actually, lads. Role passives were certainly an interesting addition to Overwatch 2, but they were just severely mismanaged. The diversity of the cast does not allow for one blanket effect to work as well as it can on every single character individually. It's just not possible. In the case of tanks, you need to look at every one of them on a case-by-case basis and decide what numbers that they should get. Reinhardt would need a high one, Orisa would need a low one, you all get what I mean. That knockback resistance value has to be balanced well so that the enemy team has some counterplay to it, but also so that the tank in question can actually make use of it, considering half of them do genuinely need it. And in the case of DPS, well, look, I do think that the DPS passive we currently have was sorely needed because there's been a severe overhealing issue in this game for years. But I will say it was implemented in such a poor way that rewards DPS for doing the thing that they were already planning to do. And it's even worse considering that, it's just not balanced across the entire roster of DPS characters. Would my proposed DPS changes fix it? They might, I couldn't tell you. But I do think they'd certainly be a step in the right direction to making it feel better to play against that DPS passive, instead of just receiving an immediate 20% because Tracer tapped you from the other end of the map. But anyway, tell me yourselves, what do you think of the role passives in Overwatch? I have a Twitch, Twitter, Discord, all that in the description. If you could check them out, I'd appreciate it immensely. But look, if you're still here, go on, drop a like, sub, click the funny join button, and sure look, I'll talk to you next time, lads. Honestly.
I'll show you the world.
You're not going anywhere. I am a genius. I'm playing Tony Hawk. Wait. What happens if I... Oh, you're brave. I was hoping it would just bring you up.